Hi, I'm Deborah Bringleson, the founder of the Quantum Results Formula. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the formula that people just like you in 17 countries are using to transform their lives. I'm going to reveal the exact formula that I used to rock Richard Branson. Before we met, he was a very hard no to doing business with my clients. But he didn't know about my secret sauce. He was so wowed that he ended up signing a deal worth more than $300 million in annual revenue. Imagine if you had that secret and you or your salespeople could make more in just one sale than in all of last year.
Thursday morning, I woke up and everything felt different. And all of a sudden, it's like, I got to call Deborah. I think I actually shifted. Lifeline. A few hours later on Thursday, I made the biggest art sale of my life. I think I sold as much art in 2 hours as I did all of last year together.
What if you could break the false ceiling you have on your income and your life and make so much money that to celebrate you rent a private island in Belize with a private chef?
You're probably living smaller than you think. Nothing's not possible. Anything's possible, whether it's a business goal, whether it's a personal goal, whether it's renting a private island. One of the things that we were able to do is confidently more than double our prices. Do I want to go from making $10K a month to $100K a month to $1 million a month?
People are even using this secret formula to heal their bodies, like from cancer, in just 4 months without chemo.
This stuff really works. Deborah just shifted me.
To learn how to do it yourself, stick around because today I'm going to reveal all of that and so much more. Hi, I'm Deborah Bringleson, and I am so excited that you're here with me today. I have been growing businesses around the world for about 30 years now, and I developed this formula for people just like you. So I'm excited to have you here, and I'm excited that you're looking to maximize your results. You know, so many people, they start a business, they get really excited about what it is they have to offer, the product, their services, and they dive in and discover that it's a lot more than just about offering a great product or service. To really grow a business, you've got to understand how to meet your prospective buyers where they are. You've got to understand how to communicate with them and how to, even if they think that you have nothing that they want or need, that you actually do. And so that's really what the Business Growth Intensive is all about. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I started growing businesses, as I said, about 25, 30 years ago. I was brought into a company that was failing. I mean, literally, when I walked in the door to meet with the board of directors on the first day, they were fighting. Half of them were saying, look, it's over, let's turn the lights off and just call it done. And then the other half were saying, well, you know, we've already hired Deborah, let's bring her in and see what she can do. So that little tiny company, my very first one, had an annual operating budget of about $56,000. When I finished working with them, they had grown that revenue to $13 million. And I knew that I was onto something. So what are some of the things that you're going to learn today in the Business Growth Intensive? The first thing that you're going to learn as you go through this course is what I call the power of three. So a lot of people who do business consulting and business coaching, they teach one modality. You know, it's let me teach you sales or let me teach you marketing, and that's what you need to grow your business. Well, yeah, you do need those things to grow your business, but you need so much more, and that's what my power of three formula really does. So what's the power of three? First, it is those proven business strategies. I don't call it marketing, so throughout this course, you will probably hear me refer to it as strategic messaging. For me, marketing has value, but it's a tool in your toolbox. And a lot of people think that marketing is the entire business or the entire toolbox, and it's not. So I like to call it strategic messaging. What's the difference? Marketing focuses on fonts and colors and graphics. And I've worked with companies who have won awards for their incredibly beautiful materials, like their websites with, flowing curtains. And I come in, and my philosophy is strategic messaging. Well, what's that? It's messaging to your prospects in a way that teaches them that they're wrong when they think you don't have something that they desperately need that will revolutionize their business or transform their lives. And when you message to them strategically, you take them from saying, no, I'm not interested in hearing what you have to say, or I'm absolutely not interested in your product or service, and you lift them up to a point where they're saying, okay, tell me more. And then you lift them a little higher to another point where they're saying, yeah, I think I could use that. And you lift them finally to the point where they're pulling out their credit card. That's how you message strategically. So one company that I worked with, as I said, they had this beautiful website before I got involved. And you'll hear me talk about this company a lot as we move through this class, because it's a great example of how bringing all of the elements of the power of three together really works. So this company had this beautiful website. They'd won all these awards. They were very, very proud of it. They'd had their website in place for over a year. And during that year, they had made $0 in sales. Zero. Their revenue for that entire year was zero. So I came in with the power of three, and one of those pieces is the strategic business tools, and a piece of that is strategic messaging, and I upended their website. They were horrified because the website that I brought in wasn't as beautiful, but it was functional. And after we got the website up and running and implemented the rest of the power of three, we made $602 million in revenue that year. So that's just one example of the power of what you're going to be learning. So the first power of three is strategic business tools. The second piece of the formula is what I like to call success formulas, and knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to make a presentation. A lot of people think, well, that's just, you just stand up and you make your presentation. That's something you should know. Have you ever spoken to someone, a salesperson, who fumbled through the entire presentation and they didn't get your attention? That's important to know. How to put a deal together, how to negotiate. When I was under tremendous pressure negotiating one of the biggest deals I've ever done with Sir Richard Branson from the Virgin brand, one of the things that I had to keep stopping myself from doing is what's called negotiating against yourself. Oh, I want to close this deal so bad that I'll keep offering more and I'll keep offering more, so they don't ever get a chance to negotiate. You're just negotiating for them. I had to make sure that I wasn't doing that. How many of your salespeople are doing that? They're giving away the store and you're not getting the best deals that you possibly can. Are you possibly doing that yourself? So we're going to talk about all of the things that make that up. Time management, strategic time management. How do you have enough time in your life to have a great life? So many of the CEOs that I work with around the world, they started their business because they thought, I want to be the boss. I want to have my time to myself. I don't want to be working in a job. And what they discover, because they don't know how to actually do it effectively, is that their business becomes their job. CEOs are more stressed out than ever, and it's affecting their lives, their health, their marriages, their relationships with their children. And from my perspective, that's not having a great life. You deserve to have a highly successful business and an amazing, great life also. And so part of what we're going to do in the Business Growth and Intensive is help you understand how to make that happen for you. Okay, the third piece of the power of three formula is quantum physics. And I have been studying and using in my own life quantum physics for over 30 years. I first got interested in it in college and started learning about it, started applying it to my own life and seeing how it worked, and in some ways magically transformed uh, uh, my life experience and what I was doing. Things happened that probably shouldn't have. And so then I started using it with my clients. A little bit here, a little bit there. I was still working out the formula. And then a few years ago, I started using it full on. Look, I'll be honest with you. Part of the reason why I held back a little bit was I was concerned that as a successful businesswoman, as someone who was out there creating amazing results, if I started talking about what at the time was some people were thinking was maybe woo-woo science or not credible, then it would affect my credibility. But what happened was I started working with clients, and some of them really started adopting what I was teaching them full on, and their results were far and away better than anything I had ever seen before. And so at that point in my career, I said, look, I've got to start bringing this to the world and letting other CEOs know what incredible exponential results they can have too. And just one example of that is the client that I was just talking about, the one with the website that we revamped and made it effective, even if it wasn't quite as pretty. That particular client, as I said, had $0 in revenue for over a year. And I started working with her. She was a real estate company. She sold houses. And we did all of the pieces of the power of three that I knew to bring in the strategic business tools, the strategies, the messaging, all of that was in place. 8 months went by and we still weren't making any money. And I said to her, look, I think that you're blocking your success. I think you're blocking money. You're not allowing it into your life. I want to do some work with you. I want to bring in, the third element of the power of three, the quantum physics. Are you open to that? And she said, absolutely. So we started working together, clearing out those energy blocks. And after our first session of doing that, within a week, literally within a week, she made $298 million in home sales. So I knew that I was really onto something at that point. At the end of 12 months of working together, she had gone from $0 revenue in the previous year to $602 million in revenue that year. That really laid the full foundation of the Power Three. And that's what we're going to be learning and talking about today. So how about you? What are some of the things that are happening in your life? What are the struggles that you're having as a CEO? One of the things that I, as a former CEO myself, I know that being a CEO can be very lonely. And what are some of the struggles that you're facing yourself? As I work with clients who've made it, like you've gotten your business started, you've gotten to a certain level, and now you're ready to take it to the next level, or you've discovered that you're facing all kinds of issues that need to be resolved, like vanishing sales or sales that are up and down and not consistent. That's very common. A lot of businesses, they'll have a really great month and then their sales fall off a cliff. They feel like they're riding a roller coaster, or they experienced beginner's luck in those first few years and they made great revenue and everything is amazing. And then all of a sudden something happens, whether it's something in their business or the economy turns and revenues start to flatten out or start to drop. They have employees who are showing up for a paycheck, but not actually committed to growing the company or serving the clients with exceptionally. So what's on this map are all of the things that we need to make sure you've got a handle on in order to, one, have that great successful business and have a great life and move you forward to that next level. So this is the map to Deinde Gradu, which is Latin for the next level. So where we're at right now, you know, whether it's 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, and you're looking to get to 20 million, 50 million, or, you know, even like some of my clients, multiple billions. Wherever you are, these are the elements and the pieces that we need to get in place. And, you know, as you look at this, I want you to really think about what are the dragons in your business and in your life. And if you look at page 3, I'd like you to write that down and maybe even, you know, participate in the conversation in the group here. What are some of the dragons that your business is facing, and what are you facing? What are the dragons in your personal life? Because understand this, you take your business into your life, it affects everything that you're doing, especially if you're one of those people who find yourself working around the clock. Even if you're not sitting in your office, you've got your cell phone, you know, in your hand, and you're constantly responding to texts and emails, and you're constantly thinking, is your brain ever turned off? Oh, if I could just solve this problem. Oh, I need to work this out. Oh, I need to have that conversation. I remember when I was a CEO of a company, I would make my secretary crazy because I'd show up in the morning and I would have left voice messages for her all through the night. And she's like, do you ever sleep? Does that sound familiar? So what are the dragons that you're facing in your business, and what are the dragons that you're facing in your life? Whether it's, you know, employees that are a problem, HR is a problem, you're in the tar pits of stagnation, or you're throwing and burning money in the money pit of marketing because, you know, you're throwing money at things. Everybody says you've got to market here, you've got to do this, you've got to use social media, you've got to, gotta. You're throwing money at it, but none of it's effective. Do you have a culture that supports you? And a lot of people say, you know, look, I'm providing these people with a paycheck and I'm, you know, providing them with benefits. Why do I also have to worry about culture? Well, let me tell you, if you don't, it can sink your company. And the companies that I work with, and studies also show, the companies that invest time and energy in creating a great corporate culture are the companies that are kicking butt around the world and thriving and being more successful than the companies who don't focus on it. Look, the first people who are going to leave your business are your superstars, leaving you with a company full of zombie employees if they disappear, if your superstars disappear. They don't have to be there. And your superstars are running circles around everyone else. So you want to keep them. You want to have that great culture where people are excited to show up in the morning. And at 5 o'clock on a Friday, when things go to hell, you want people who are so committed that they're like, I'm going to put down my backpack, my briefcase, and I'm going to stick around and solve this problem. You don't want people like, well, it's Friday, it's 5 o'clock, and I'm out the door. See you Monday, right? That's all part of having a great corporate culture. When you think about the dragons in your life, what's your business doing to your personal life? And look, I'm not here to beat you up. I'm here to help you have that great life. So if you're working all of those hours, if you're distracted, if your spouse or your child comes in to ask you a question or share something exciting in their life and you can't stop, look them in the eye and truly engage them in what they want to talk about, and let them share their joy with you or their pain or ask their question. That's going to affect your relationships. And you don't want that. You want to have that great life. You want to have those great relationships. a few years ago, I started working with a client, and literally in one of our very early conversations, it broke my heart because he started sobbing, and literally sobbing. And this was a guy who was very tough, you know, a little obnoxious in his toughness, to be honest. And he said, I don't know if I can do this. My wife is the most amazing person on the planet. I can't believe she picked me. I don't deserve her. She is brilliant. She's fun. She's beautiful. And my two daughters are just like her. And I'm working so much in this business that she's given me 48 hours. She can't take it anymore. I'm never around. I'm always on my cell phone. I'm always distracted. She's given me 48 hours, and I'm going to lose my wife, and I'm going to lose my whole family. And unfortunately, I couldn't help him turn around his business in 48 hours. And she'd been through years of this. And finally, it just said, I have had enough. I don't want that happening to you. So what are the dragons that are in your life? Are you working so many hours that you're not eating right and it's affecting your body? You're not exercising and you're gaining some weight? You're stressed out. Maybe you're drinking a little too much. Maybe you're using other substances. All of that is taking a toll on your life, your relationships, your body, and it's taking a toll on your business. So they're all interconnected. So really think about, what are the dragons that are happening in your life? What are the things that you want to focus on during this class, both for your business and personally? Okay, so let's move on to the next page and let's talk about how we actually do that. If you're like most businesses, you're making money out of about 3 to 10% of your potential market. So stop for a minute and think about what that really means. You're making your money out of 3 to 10% of your potential market. What does that mean? One, it means that 90 to 97% of your potential revenue is down the drain before you ever start. That should really set off some warning bells in your head. Okay, whatever you're making, let's say I'm making $1 million a year or $5 million a year. Out of 3 to 10% of my market, not touching at least 90% of it. What could that do to your revenue if you were able to get down into that 90%? And think about this, your competition, they're not battling for that 90%, they're battling for that top 3 to 10% too. So that's where your greatest competition is. So when you're talking to your prospective buyers, what are you talking to them about? Your product, your service, your widget, how you've been in business for 30 years, it's a family business, and we treat our customers like family. Honestly, they don't care about that. They don't care about how long you've been in business or that you treat them like family. They want to buy something that's going to make a difference in their life. Okay, so let's go back and talk about the realtor who made no revenue for 12 months. Well, she was a realtor, she was selling houses. What was she talking to her potential buyers about? Granite, lighting, houses. Those potential buyers, her real potential buyers, weren't interested in buying a house. They had a house. So when she started talking in her website and in her brochures about, look at our granite, look at our lighting, they were not even remotely interested. What are you talking to your potential buyers about, and how does that make a difference to you? So let's start with the understanding that at least 90% of your revenue is down the drain before you ever start. Okay, so if you're making your money, let's do the math. And I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of complicated math, so we're going to keep it really simple. Let's do the math as an example, and then I want you to do the math for your own company. Let's say you have 100 leads coming in every month, and your leads are coming from that top 10%. Let's say you're not just making money out of the top 3%, but you've actually got down a little bit and you're making money in the top 10%. And how do we know this? So when we survey audiences and do an analysis of audiences, whether it's, you know, a live audience that you're speaking to or the audience that comes to your website or sees your brochures, what we know is that about 3% of the market is at any one time buying right now. So they're, you know, when you say who's in the market for a washing machine, a new website, a new kitchen remodel, whatever it is, about 3% of the audience says, yes, I'm in the market to buy right now. The next 7%, they're, you know, open to hearing what you have to say. They're not in the market right now, but, you know, maybe in the next 6 months, they might be. The next 30% is they're not thinking about it. They're, you know, it hasn't occurred to them to care about what you might provide for them. The next 30%, they think they're not interested. Nah, I don't ever have a need for that. And the bottom 30% says, I'm a hard no. I am absolutely, definitely not interested in. And either later on in this class or in the next class, I'll talk to you about my experience taking Richard Branson from a hard, absolute, definite no and driving him up that buying triangle to the point where he became a buyer. So let's apply this to your business. So let's say we have 100 leads a month coming in, and they're coming out of that, like most businesses, top 3 to 10%. So let's say out of the top 10%. And you're taking those 100 leads, and every month you're closing about 30 of them, 30%, into buyers. If each one of those buyers represents $1,000, 30 buyers times $1,000, that's $30,000 a month in revenue. Okay, so pause this video and I want you to do your actual math. How many leads a month are you bringing in every month? Do you actually know how many leads a month you're bringing in every month and what's happening to them? My guess is you probably don't. But let's move forward with the exercise and do your best. So how many leads a month are you bringing in, and how many are you closing into buyers on a consistent basis? What do each one of those buyers represent in terms of dollars on average? And so then what's your average monthly revenue? If that's coming out of the top 10% of your market, what would happen to your business if you could 4x that? So let's go back to the example. Let's say we get down, in the beginning of the example, we're making money out of the top 10%. Let's say we get down to just that next 30%. So instead of making money out of the 10%, we're now making money out of the 40% of our market. What happens to our revenue? So we started with 100 leads a month. That now goes to 400. We moved them into 30 buyers originally. That now, if we keep the same, and we should assume that actually once you learn how to do this, your closing ratio should get significantly better. But let's assume that we're just going to keep the same closing ratio. So instead of 30 buyers representing $30,000, we now have 120 buyers representing $120,000. Okay, so $120,000 instead of $30,000 a month. How would an extra $90,000 a month feel to you? What difference would that make in your business and in your life? Okay, so go back and do your math. Pause this recording and go back and do the exact same example in your math. If you take the same number of leads and increase it by 4 the way that we did, so instead of going from 100, go from 100 to 400 and then 30 buyers to 120 buyers, what, if you're doing your own math, what kind of revenue increase does that make for you? And how would that feel? So in this example that I just gave you, that's an additional $90,000 a month every month. What impact would that have over a year's time on your business? If you could just increase your leads and keep the same closing ratio. And as I said, once you implement this fully, what you're going to learn in this class, you should be able to improve your closing ratio. So if you look at page 6, this is a pyramid of everything that you need to have in place in order to have a successful business that you can rest your life on, rest your growth on. But, and if you look at it, you can see that leadership is at the foundation of the business. We're going to talk about leadership, but I want to get you some early wins. So we're gonna look at how we bring in those additional leads and how we close them. And if you look at page 7, so this is the realtor that I've been talking to you about. And when she and I first met, as I said, she made no money for an entire year. She was really focused on the top of that buying pyramid, 3% of the market who was in the market, people who were in the market to buy a house, where her greatest competition was. That's where everybody was trying to get those people to buy their house. Her greatest potential for growth was in that 97% who said, I have a house, I'm not interested in having a house. What were they interested in? And you're going to need to do some research on your own, but we did some research on her ideal buyers, and we discovered that you're right, they weren't interested in buying a house, but they did have some commonalities that we could talk to them about, some things that they cared about. We discovered, we hired somebody to do research, and you can do that or you can do the research on your own. But we discovered that our ideal buyers were at a higher incidence of diabetes, heart disease, and their children were at a 300% increased risk of teen drug use and other aberrant behaviors. So our ideal buyers weren't interested in talking about a house, but they actually were interested in talking about heart disease. So how do you talk to somebody about heart disease and say, hey, buy a house? Okay, we're going to get to that as we go through this course. But what happened was we started talking to people about heart disease. We started providing them with information. Our website that, remember, it was all flowy and beautiful and won awards, we got rid of all of that, and we started talking about, we had videos about how to prevent heart disease. What are some of the things that you can do to reduce your risk of dying from heart disease? Remember, we're trying to sell a house. We're talking about heart disease. We're talking about what are the things that are causing children to use drugs or get into trouble, and how do you as a parent help prevent that? Again, we're trying to sell a house, but we're talking about things that her ideal buyers cared about. And what happened was they started to lean in and ask us for more information. So here's an actual buying example that happened. One of our salespeople who had been trained on how to do this type of effective selling was talking to a prospective buyer and discovered that his father had died at 54 from heart disease. And this man was on the verge of turning 54. And she knew how to draw this information out, engage him in that conversation. And he was worried. What was going to happen if he, like his father, died from heart disease? He already started having some symptoms and some problems. What was going to happen to his family? Who was going to take care of his children? All of those kinds of things. As she nurtured this relationship, provided him with more valuable information, she was able to lead him through his own personal story so that he understood how buying one of my client's houses actually could help to reduce his stress, There were things about where it was located and some of the natural things about being in this area that had been found through studies at Harvard and Stanford and other places to actually reduce the risk of heart disease. What happens when someone is talking to you about something that you don't want to buy? When they're trying to get their hand in your wallet? If you're like most people, you back up, either physically or energetically. You pull back. Okay, this person's trying to get their hand in my wallet. I need to run. But what happens when somebody genuinely takes an interest in you and wants to help you transform your life? They want to help you make your life better. You lean in. Tell me more. Well, this person has information, and it's not just their opinion, but there's actual hard studies behind it, behind the information. You lean in. You want to learn more. Tell me more. That person becomes your trusted advisor. That's who you want to be. That's who you want your sales team to be. Not the person trying to close the sale, make the sale. Hey, come on in. Let me show you what we've got. Let me get my hand in your wallet. And I'm hoping no one is as kind of smarmy as that. But that's kind of how it feels, right? But what if you could be their advisor? What if you could be the person that they turn to for advice? Look, even if they don't buy in that moment, if you're the person that they call at 3 a.m. to solve their problem, when they are ready to buy, they're not going to buy from the guy down the street. They're going to buy from you. When you're helping them understand how to make their life better, they're going to buy from you. Right? So let's go on to the next page. And this is where I really want you to put some effort. And as we go through this isn't, oh, Deborah said to fill out these blanks. So let me get something written down fast so I can move on to the next thing. Right now, you're building the foundation for your growth. You want to 4x your revenue? Put some time into this, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about your current buyers. 5 current ideal buyers. So look, there's a whole world of buyers out there, right? There are people who, they need your product and service and they come and buy. Fine, let's serve them. But then there are people who are a joy. If only we could have all of our buyers be like this. They pay on time. They are always looking for your help to move to the next level, so they're interested in buying your next solution. They're delightful to work with. They refer people. They're a big fan. Those are the kind of people that you want, or kind of companies that you want. So on this page, page 8, put down 5 of your current ideal buyers. So it could be individuals if you're B2C, it could be companies if you're B2B, or it could be a combination. It could be if you have one point of contact at a company, don't just write down the company, but write down that one point of contact. So write those down, pause this, and really think about, who are my ideal buyers that I love, and I just wish that this is all I had. Okay, so pause the video and do that. All right, now what do they have in common? As I said, one of the things you're going to hear me say over and over again is what's under that. So typically where people start with this, what do they have in common is, they're 35 to 65, they're male, they're female, they're middle management, whatever it is. Those are surface answers. And sure, you want to know that, but I want to know what's really under that. You're selling a product or service. This is a business transaction, so you want to be able to provide all of the great business information that they need, but you also need to understand that people make decisions as people, right? So what's underneath all of those things? Some of the things that I would want to know is, are they parents? Are they parents of young children, and so they're struggling with, I don't have enough time to sleep, and how do I make all of the decisions that are important to make as a parent so that my child can have a great life? What are the pressures that I'm feeling? Being a parent can be very stressful, and it can feel very lonely. You never know what are the right answers. There's always somebody who's got an opinion. Are they a parent of a high schooler and the cost of college is in their future? Are they middle management and they're getting tremendous pressure from their boss to perform, and they're also getting pressure from the people who work for them, who, HR issues or underperformance issues or needing to hire or provide better benefits? What are the things that are really affecting them? What are the things that they have in common? So I want you to pause this and I want you to write down the things that they have in common. And before you turn the video back on, I want you to do it again. And ask yourself what's under that. So they're a parent of an infant to a 10-year-old. Okay, so what's under that? What are the things that a parent of an infant to a 10-year-old has to deal with? And you may need to do some research on this. So when I was talking about the realtor, we hired a company, Empire Research Group, to do research for us and get us all that great information. So you may want to hire someone like that, or you may want to do the research yourself. You may want to go out and talk to your ideal buyers and really learn about them. But we're building a profile because we're going to go after companies and people just like they are. So what's under that? Now what's keeping them awake at night? And, they're not laying in bed at night saying, if I could only buy the perfect new car, or if I could only buy the perfect whatever it is you're selling. No one's laying in bed at night thinking about that. Staring at the ceiling, I can't sleep because my workers' compensation rates are going up because I've got so many employees who aren't paying attention that they're getting hurt on the job. That's what's keeping them awake at night. My best salesperson just left, or one of my clients lived in a remote area and had a hard time finding great salespeople because there just weren't a lot of people around. And so that was something that was keeping them awake at night. But then I want you to turn the video off and I want you to go through this. And before you turn the video on again, I want you to say to yourself, what's under that? So let's stick with a client who was in a remote area and had a hard time attracting salespeople because there weren't a lot of salespeople around. An immediate problem for him that he was thinking about was, I got to bring in more salespeople and great salespeople. Why? Because I'm not making enough money. I can't grow my business. I can't hire enough people to do the work that needs to get done. I'm working in my business far more than I want to be. I'm working those 60 to 80-hour weeks, which is very common for CEOs. What's under that? Keep asking yourself what's under that. So you may not walk in and hand a brochure to somebody saying, I'm going to help you solve the fact that you can't sleep at night. But if you understand why they're not sleeping at night, you can help them to understand what the transformation is that they need. And what are they saying to themselves? So you've gone through that exercise maybe 2 or 3 times. What's under that? What's under that? Until you really get to the heart of it. Now, what are they saying to themselves? And they may not be saying this consciously, but I will guarantee you at some level, they're saying some version of, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. They're laying in bed at night. I've started this business. I'm not spending time with my spouse. The company's not growing. I'm dealing with all these things. And in the back of their mind, they hear their father say, you'll never amount to anything. Or they hear somebody say, well, your sister's the smart one or the pretty one. Or if you could only be better at this, or if you could only this. There's always some version of I'm not enough. So what is it that they're saying to themselves? I'm not going to be able to do this. How am I going to do this? So pause the recording and write down what are the things that they're saying to themselves. And that, trust me, they're not saying to themselves, my life would be magical if I could only get a new website, or if I only had a brand new car, or if I only had whatever. They're not saying anything to themselves about your product or service. So please don't write that down. But what are they saying to themselves? And if you notice on the left-hand side, it says money, risk, and time. Everything falls into 3 categories: money, risk, or time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time to spend with my family or to take care of myself or enjoy life. They are thinking about the risks. People are so unhappy in work because I've got a terrible corporate culture and they're causing problems and getting hurt. That increases my risk. Risk of lawsuits, risk of unhappy customers. So what are the things in the categories of money, risk, and time that they're actually caring about? So pause the recording, answer those questions, and again, go back and do it again. What's under that? What are they really worried about? Even if it's not in the forefront of their mind, what's under that? Right? So when we were selling houses to people, they weren't, coming to us and saying, until we pulled it out of them, they weren't coming to us and saying, hey, I'm really worried that I'm going to die from heart disease, or that my kid is going to go to jail because they're using drugs. They came in and with all of their human bravado, life is great. It was when we understood what they really cared about, what they were really saying to themselves, that we were able to engage them in a way that helped them understand that through buying one of our homes, they could transform their life. So look at page 12 of your workbook. Most companies are talking about product and features. That's the marketing death trap. Let me tell you about my product. Let me tell you about the features or the benefits. Tell me about your price. Can you cut your price? Can you give me a deal? That's your typical look at me marketing. Can you give me a deal? Tell me about the price. Look, you don't want to be the person who negotiates on price. You want to sell a great product, a great service, and you want to get compensated for what it is that you're delivering. You don't want to negotiate on price. One of my very favorite tools is to raise the price. So this realtor that we've been talking about, they hadn't sold anything for over a year. I had been working with them for about 6 months. So 18 months had gone by. They hadn't made any money. I said, we're going to raise the prices of all of our houses. What? Everybody went crazy. And look, I'm not saying go out and raise all of your prices right now. You've got to do it intelligently and thoughtfully, and it's got to make sense. But when you're competing on price, then you're killing your revenues and you become the cheap person, the cheap company, because you're constantly competing on price. If you're Walmart, that may work for you, but you don't want to be there normally. So I want you to go into what I call the iron triangle, talking to the people that you want to attract about the things that they care about. And it's always comes down to money, risk, and time. How's it affecting their finances, their money, what they're able to make? How's it affecting their time? Time is the new commodity. That's what everyone wants. More time to play, more time to spend with family, more time to care for themselves. So what are the things that you can talk about in money, risk, and time? And that's the exercise that we've done today so far. I want you to meet your buyers where they are, not where you are. Where you are is, let me tell you about my features and benefits. Where they are is, I've got this problem. I'm living in a situation that I don't want to be in. it's costing me money, risk, or time. I need somebody to help me get out of that. Does that make sense? So what is it that your clients really care about? What's keeping them awake at night? I guarantee you it's not your product or service. And if you can solve that, if you can help them get to that transformation, that's where you get down into that bottom 90%. And next time we meet, I'm going to talk to you about my experience working with Richard Branson, and he was at the absolute bottom of that pyramid. He was a hard no. He was an absolute no. He was a, I don't even want to talk to you. I don't want to consider what you're saying. No. And how I talked to him about what he cared about and drove him up the buying pyramid and actually closed a deal with him worth more than $300 million a year for my clients. So all of the exercises that you've had so far today, I want you to go through and I want you to do them. Keep asking yourself, what's under that? What's under that? In our next meeting and subsequent meetings, we're going to talk about what you see Max Map Level 2. You're not there yet, but before we can get to Max Map Level 2, we've got to get through Max Map Level 1. That's all the questions that we went to today. I'll tell you that every single one of my high-end clients that I work with one-on-one, they go through this exact same process. So for those of you who are sitting there going, yeah, fine, I'll just scribble something in these boxes because Deborah said I had to fill the boxes. Don't do that. Really dig in. Every single one of those clients, the one who went from 0 to 602 million, the one who increased their revenue 110% in 8 months. The one who went from startup, pre-revenue 0, to closing a deal for $67 million in 5 weeks. By the way, he took this exact same class that you're taking. Every single one of them went through this process. So I want you to go through it too, because I want you to get your revenues. I want you, look, 4Xing your revenue is something that if you do this and you do it thoughtfully and well and actually implement it, you shouldn't have a problem with that. Okay, so I want that for you and I want even more for you. So go back, do the exercises, and I will see you in the next class. Have a great day and enjoy this. It can be fun. See you soon.